Keisha.
Sí, es que estoy esperando que suban los atendí. Porque veo que el número está subiendo.
Yeah, sorry, sí. Que se quedaron un poquito apretados ahí en la entrada de...
Sí,
Ok,
dando un break.
sí.
Cuando vea que el número se estabilice, que voy a empezar. Buenos días a todos. Mi nombre es la doctora Keisha Tirado, directora interina del Centro de Innovación y Tecnología para el Puerto Rico Small Business Technology and Development Center, o mejor conocido como el Puerto Rico SBTDC. Le doy la más cordial bienvenida al webinar del Puerto Rico SBTDC y el Centro de Innovación y Tecnología Preparing a Responsive SBIR STTR Proposal por la doctora Jenny Servo. Les recuerdo que esta conferencia está siendo grabada solo para propósitos informativos y educativos y no debe interpretarse como un endoso a cualquier producto o servicio. La información contenida en este webinar no constituye una consulta legal o profesional. Así que les voy a dar un poquito de información acerca de quien nos acompaña hoy para dar este webinar, la doctora Jenny Servo, who is the founder and president of Dawn Breaker and has more than 27 years experience in the management of government contracts and in the design of programs for highly creative individuals. Change has been an ongoing focus in her efforts with transformational entrepreneurs, cognizant of both the objectives and budget constraints of each federal customer. Dr. Servo combines the best practices for instructional design and change management to the development of unique programs to fill each customer's objectives. Each program developed for federal and state agencies are distinct and contain within them variations that address the heterogeneity of the companies participating in each program. Dr. Servo prescribes to the policy of management by objectives and has been responsible for ensuring that program process and outcome match agency expectations for all programs across multiple agencies. Dr. Servo is an avid writer and readily conveys best practices in innovation and entrepreneurship. In innovation and entrepreneurship in books, articles, and magazines on these topics. And it is a pleasure to have you here with us today, Dr. Servo. I welcome you.
Thank you so much, Keisha. So, buenos días a todos. Yo puedo hablar español, pero no puedo dar este seminario en español porque no conozco todas las palabras técnicas. Lo siento por eso. Pero cuando tiene preguntas, puede pregúntame en español. Okay? So, it's my pleasure to be with you today, and there are two parts to this presentation. I'm going to start by talking in general about how to prepare a responsive SBIR or STTR proposal, and I'll talk to you about the difference between both of those. After a break, which will be in about an hour, I'm then going to focus on the program of the National Science Foundation, or NSF. So I'm going to give the big picture first of all, and then later on we will focus on the National Science Foundation. So what we're going to cover is I want to make sure that you understand the purpose for these two programs. And sometimes SBIR program is pronounced SBIR. So if you hear someone talking about the SBIR program, that is the same thing as the SBIR program. The STTR program started later and must include a research organization, and we'll talk about that later. I'm going to give you an overview of the programs. I'm going to talk about the agencies that offer the programs, how much money there is, how the money is provided in rounds of funding. Now, to submit a proposal to any agency, you must register. And so we're going to talk about registrations. It's not necessarily a quick or easy process. At least one of them is slow. And then we're going to talk about how proposals are reviewed. There's an administrative review process first to make sure that you have been compliant with the guidelines they have given. Then we'll talk about the evaluation criteria. And there are three: innovation, the people that are doing the work, and commercialization. So after I go through all of that, we'll then talk about how much time you should anticipate it will take to prepare a responsive proposal and how to plan your time so that you can accomplish that. So in order to prepare a responsive proposal to any agency, you first have to understand the purpose of these programs. So the SBIR program started first in 1982. So it's been around for over 40 years. And the purpose is to involve small business in conducting federal research and development, addressing the government's needs. And that's done in different ways, and there's different types of needs that they have. But the government gives money to large business, academia, and small business. And so this is the mechanism for involving small businesses such as yours with addressing federal R&D needs. Another purpose of the program is to increase the likelihood of commercialization. That means bringing that product to market. It's not good enough just to do the research and solve a problem. You have to then make it widely available to the customers and end users, and that's referred to as commercialization. They also want to stimulate what they refer to as technological innovation. And every agency looks at that a little bit differently. And we'll talk about how NSF looks at that when we get to that part of the presentation. They want to encourage the participation by women and socially and economically disadvantaged individuals. The way that the government has started to do that is by providing what is called a Phase 0 program, also the FAST program, and other programs that SBA has are aimed at trying to involve diverse populations in addressing the government's needs. And then with the STTR program, which came a decade later in about 1992, they want to facilitate the collaboration between a research institution and a small business. So we're going to talk about both of those. So who shouldn't consider either one of these programs? Now, everyone needs money. When you are a small business, you always are looking for money. But if the only reason you're looking at this program is because you want money to enhance your cash flow, that would not be a good reason to participate in this program, because it's not a loan, okay, and its purpose is for R&D. If you need money for marketing and sales, meaning you've already got a product, you've already manufactured it, and now what you want to do is have money for marketing and sales, that is also not a good fit with the purpose of the SBIR and STTR programs, because they focus on research and development. For the same reason, if you're looking for money just for manufacturing, just for scaling up production, that also doesn't fit with the criteria, okay? So I want to make sure that you understand at the beginning that this is for research and development, different types, which we will talk about. But unless you're going to be doing research and development, this would not be an appropriate program. And there are other federal programs that do meet those objectives. So let's talk about eligibility. What is a small business, for example? So a small business must be for-profit. Not-for-profit organizations cannot get an SBIR or an STTR award. You must be for-profit. A small business is defined as under 500 people. So you could start with 0 at the time that you submit your application. You don't even have to have a company, but at the time of award, you must have a company. And the company could have 1 employee, 2 employees, a whole spectrum. The average size of SBIR and STTR companies is about 30 employees. That's the average. But there are many that start with one. And the National Science Foundation, which we'll talk about later, focuses on startups. It focuses on companies that are just starting and are likely to have 1 or 2 employees. Work must be done in the US. And again, the focus is on performing R&D. So even though you can purchase some equipment, the purpose of this is not just to buy equipment that you need. And there are guidelines in every solicitation that talks about how much you can spend on different types of equipment. Okay. So the bottom line is the small business is always the applicant, meaning the party that's going to submit the application or proposal, and they're always the awardee. Even if you have a university as a subcontractor, you, the small business, will always be the applicant and always be the awardee. And the reason why I'm emphasizing that is that sometimes people find that confusing, okay, especially people from academia, because they obviously apply for awards through the university. This is different. They are going to be a subcontractor to a small business because this is the Small Business Innovation Research or Small Business Tech Transfer Program. So now let me talk with you in general terms about how much money there is with this program, which agencies offer this program, and how it's structured. Now there's a lot on this page, okay, but if we focus on the left-hand side on the circle and look in the middle, this is data from FY20 because it takes a while for the agencies to report their information. The amount of money has been getting larger every year, not smaller. So if you look in the middle of this circle, it says SBIR in fiscal year 2020 was $3.53 billion, which was given to small businesses throughout the United States and its territories. STTR is a smaller program, and $485 million was provided for STTR programs across the agencies that have that program. So that's a lot of money. And now I have something that says contracts at the top and grants at the bottom. And let me talk about these agencies. Half of the money, half of the pie, goes to small businesses that are addressing the needs of the Department of Defense. DoD stands for the Department of Defense. That's the lion's share of all of this. And they provide contracts to do work that will help the warfighter. So they're going to be the customer when it's DoD. The next largest is HHS, Health and Human Services. Most of you will think about NIH, the National Institutes of Health, which is under HHS, and it's the largest part of that. They offer grants, which are very flexible, and they had a lot of money in FY20, 1.21 billion were given to small businesses. Now coming over here to the left, DOE stands for the Department of Energy. Their budget in that year was 320 million. NSF also offers grants, very flexible, and that's 219 million. So what we're going to focus on later today, this morning, is the NSF program. But I want you to see the size of this pot of money for small businesses, and it grows every year. Okay. Over here on the right-hand side, it represents the same information in a somewhat different way. Okay. At the top are agencies that have both an SBIR and an STTR program. These agencies, because of the size of their budgets, have to have both. Okay, so again, National Science Foundation, which we'll talk about later this morning, has both an SBIR and an STTR program. Now, the white bar in the center says agencies with SBIR or SBIR programs. USDA recently moved up here. Okay, so USDA now does both. That happened in 2021. But all of the other ones have much smaller budgets. And that doesn't mean that they're a bad choice to submit an application to or a proposal. They may be a very good choice because there's a lot of people going after this. Many times there's less people going after some of these, but they are smaller and they only offer an SBIR program. So these are the agencies that fund both. And again, we're going to be talking about National Science Foundation specifically after the break. And these are the ones that only have an SBIR or SBIR program. And there is a PDF version of the PowerPoints that I'm sharing available to you to download so that you'll have this information available for your use. Now, how does one get the money? You have to apply in response to a solicitation. And the agencies call their solicitations all different things. But in essence, it's a solicitation. The first one you're going to apply for is referred to as phase 1. Phase 1 is for concept development, and that usually lasts 6 to 12 months. The exception to this is NSF. NSF will allow up to 24 months for phase 1. And we'll talk about the size of those awards later. They're usually around 250 for the larger agencies. They are smaller phase 1s for the agencies that have less money. After you apply and win a phase 1, you then have to apply again for a phase 2. The phase 2 is for maturing that concept. They refer to it as prototype development, and it's over $1 million for the larger agencies, and it's to cover up to 2 years of work. So that's a lot of money. So on average, about $250,000 for phase 1 for the larger agencies, and over $1 million phase 2 for the larger agencies. Okay. After that, the reason why the color changes is you are expected to bring that product to market, and SBIR and STTR do not fund phase 3. So you have to commercialize, you have to find other sources of funding to bring that product to market. So again, you see that SBIR and STTR funds research and development, and then you're expected to bring that technology to market using other sources of funding, whether it is from a business angel, a venture capital firm, a Fortune 500 company, a licensee. There's all different strategies that you can use to bring that technology to market. Now, phase 0, okay, companies don't get funded usually for phase 0, even though some states will provide some funding to help you directly, okay, to prepare the application. And it varies by state. Phase 0 is also a program that is offered by 2 agencies right now. The Department of Energy offers a phase 0 program to help companies prepare a proposal. And they select a vendor, and Dawnbreaker is the vendor that helps companies if they are working on developing a proposal for the Department of Energy. Another agency which has a phase 0 program is HHS or NIH specifically. And there's a different vendor, Ava Garland, that offers this program, okay, for NIH. But this is how you receive the money, in rounds and by applying, by writing a competitive proposal. Now, STTR, I haven't spoken really much about that, is a smaller program. As I've mentioned, there are 5 of the larger agencies have an STTR. and we've listed those down below. Now, this graphic is meant to show the differences between SBIR, which is on the left-hand side, and STTR, that is on the right-hand side. And I apologize that that is faint over here. But let me talk about SBIR first. With SBIR, the small business is the applicant. They do not have to subcontract anything, but they could. And how much could they subcontract? Up to 33%, not more. Who could they subcontract to? The university, individuals, large business, other small businesses. Okay, so this is SBIR phase 1. Over here, this is STTR. The purpose is to involve a research institution. That is required. The research institution must do a minimum of 30%. The small business, which again is the applicant, must do a minimum of 40%. And at the top, which is very faint, it says discretionary 30%. That means you could choose to do what you would like with that. You could say, I'm going to give that 30% to the small business. So it's 70% is the small business, 30% is the research institution. Or you could say, I could use a lot of help from that research institution. The discretionary amount I will give to the research institution, or 60%. That doesn't make them the applicant or the awardee. You still would be the small business applicant, but you could give more of the dollars for research to the research institution. Or you could say, I'm going to need to partner in the future with a large company. I'm going to see if that large company can play a role with my phase 1, and that happens quite frequently. Okay, so those are the major differences. Small business, you do not have to subcontract anything, but you could, and it could be up to 33%. STTR, you must provide 30% of the award to the research institution, and then and 40% must go to the small business. And then there's this discretionary pot that is available for you to choose how you wish to do that. All right, so we've talked about the size of the SBIR and the STTR program. We've talked about how you have to respond to solicitations. You respond to a phase 1 solicitation first, and that's what we're going to focus on. Now, to submit an application, which is what many of the agencies call it instead of a proposal. I tend to call it a proposal, but the agencies tend to call it an application. But to do that, you have to register with a number of different organizations. And part of this is complex. So the complex part is the one in the middle, the System for Awards Management. And these are hyperlinked in the versions that you will have available so that you can click on either of these and gather more information. So why does one have to register with the System for Awards Management, or SAM as it's called? Any entity that receives a grant or a contract from the federal government in order to get paid has to register with SAM. And it is a complex process that has been going through a number of changes. And when you register with SAM, it's not simply filling out a form. There's a lot to it, and the system will check what you say. So for example, let's say that you were formed as a company 5 years ago, and you used a certain name and you had Inc. at the end of it. If you go into SAM and you leave off Inc., but you registered as so-and-so Inc., but then you leave it off when you register in SAM, the system will check and basically say, this isn't the same, and it will stop, and you have to fix something before you can go on. It also will ask for your employer identification number. So the number associated with payments to the IRS if you are an ongoing company. And if you have a different address when you put that information in than what the IRS has for you, it will stop again until you fix something else. And it drags on usually for about a month. Okay, so because of the importance of this, it's something that if you're thinking about applying for any grant or contract from the federal government, it's good to register with SAM, okay, and do it at any time because it's important and it takes time. Now, it used to be that companies would have to register with Dun and Bradstreet. That changed this year or last year, and one gets now this unique entity identifier, and you get that also from SAM. That is quicker. This last one is a very easy one, okay? But I just want you to be aware that this registration is important because this is how you get paid through this. And all sorts of information go in this system, such as your bank account information, okay? So there's a lot to it. They want to make sure that the information you put in is safe. All right, so I've also talked about this already with SAM. In order to minimize getting hung up with this, make sure that you use the same company name and address that you've used with the IRS or with anyone else. Make sure you keep copies of your password and UEI handy. I still use a paper Rolodex. I also have one in my phone, and I shouldn't keep this type of information in my phone, and I don't include my UEI or SAM password there. I do use other ones, but make sure it's available, okay? In the process of registering with SAM, you will need something called a CAGE code, which is given to you from Defense Logistics Agency. Many times it ends up in the trash. So the way to make this simple, and there's one way to make it really simple, is when you're ready to register with SAM, you go to your local Procurement Technical Assistance Center, and I know their names have changed recently. They now call themselves something different, and I haven't changed the way I'm thinking about them. But they will help you for free. And they will make this much easier. I would, when we're working with companies through the DOE Phase 0 program, we tell them, go to the PTAC in your area, and they will help you. Do not do it on your own because you'll get frustrated, okay? So there is a PTAC that serves Puerto Rico, and you should get assistance from them with registering with SAM. Okay, now, if you started registering for SAM, say 3 weeks before you wanted to submit a proposal, you probably wouldn't get SAM registration in time, and then you wouldn't be able to submit your proposal. So for that reason, if you're thinking about doing this at any time, get registered with SAM so that it's not an issue for you, okay? All right, so we've talked about one hurdle, which is a frustrating hurdle, okay, which is registration with SAM. Let's assume that you have worked on an application, a proposal, and you've submitted it to an agency. What is the first thing that they do? The first thing that they do is something called an administrative review. They basically check to see if you have followed their rules. And the solicitations can be a bit intimidating if you don't know how they're structured, okay? Because they're usually somewhat large, okay? So, and there's a lot of guidelines in there. What are the margins supposed to be on the page? How many words can there be? What is the ceiling on the budget? What type font should I use? What form should I fill out? All sorts of things, which are not fun. Okay, the fun part is actually thinking about what you're going to be doing and winning, but there's all this other stuff that you have to do. So they're going to check to see whether you've complied with their rules. And the common reasons for not passing the administrative review are listed below. If you exceed the budget, meaning you put in your proposal and it's higher than what they said they were allowing for phase one, in all likelihood, you would be administratively declined. Your proposal would not be reviewed because you're requesting more than what they say they have. If you leave out some of the forms, let's say that they require a commercialization plan, 3-page or 4-page commercialization plan, and you leave it out because you've got a lot of forms or you didn't know you had to do that, then they may administratively decline you. If you did not adhere to the page count, the margins, etc., usually what they'll do is they'll say, we told you this should be 15 pages, you submitted 20, so we're only going to read the first 15, okay? And we will review that, or they may decline. The proposal was not for research and development, or the proposal was submitted after the deadline. Now, let me just talk a little bit about this latter thing. A couple of things have come up in the past few years. There's all sorts of environmental, climatic things that are happening, whether hurricanes in the case of Puerto Rico, or it could be ice storms in Texas, or different things that make the internet down. And you know that it's due on such and such a date, but you just can't submit it because of everything that's happening where you live, okay? That doesn't mean that you can't submit the application. It means that you have to contact the agency, tell them about the problem, and ask them for more time, okay? And that's the type of problem that they will bend for, okay? So, because that happens, this comes up. We've seen it a lot in recent years, okay? So how do you pass the administrative review? Because that's what you want to do. You're working on an application. You want to make sure that it's reviewed. First of all, you read the guidelines carefully. And what I tend to do is, and I don't bid for work as an SBIR applicant. I bid on work to help SBIR companies. And so when I look at a solicitation, the first thing I do is I put together a PowerPoint, which I'm recommending that you also do, and I put key things in it so that I have it for myself. I've simplified what I have to focus on. And also if other people are working with me, either in my company or outside, that I can let them know key things. So when you look at a solicitation, first thing you've got to do is look at when the solicitation is due, the date, the time, and the time zone. Then look through the solicitation for any guidelines regarding page limits, font type, size, margins, and markings, okay? Markings, this term means how to indicate that information that you have included is proprietary, is privileged. A lot of times small businesses are concerned about sharing their concept with anybody, okay? So markings refers to how you indicate, following their guidelines, which information is proprietary. You put in the budget for the phase 1 award. What is the ceiling? You list the evaluation criteria which will be included towards the end of any solicitation. Sometimes the agency has a checklist of things, okay? And if they have a checklist, you know, these are all the things you need to do, these are all the things you need to submit, make a copy of that checklist. It's usually 1 page, and put it next to your computer. Determine through which system, either SBIR or STTR, it must be delivered. Sometimes you can only bid as an STTR. Sometimes you can only bid on a topic as SBIR. Sometimes you can do either. So you've got to note that as well, because if you are going to submit as an STTR, you have to start looking for a research institution to work with you. Make a list of the forms that must be completed. Note any additional registrations, and then note any initial steps, okay? And just put that in a PowerPoint, simplify it so that you've got something you can always check easily. Sometimes people mark up the solicitation and put tabs on them. Either one of those are fine. All right, so now I'm in general going to talk about the evaluation criteria, because when you write a proposal or an application, you are writing to the evaluation criteria. They're always going to be listed in a solicitation. So let me talk about the solicitations in a variety of ways. All right, so the heart of any application is the technical plan. Every solicitation requires that you draft a technical plan, but they don't necessarily call it the same thing. That would make it too easy. So for example, the Department of Energy and the USDA call the technical plan a project narrative. The Department of Defense and NASA call it the technical volume. The project NSF, which we'll be talking about in a little bit, calls it a project description. And NIH calls it a research plan. Now, this is where you need to spend most of your time. If you get this wrong, if you don't do a good job on the technical plan, from my perspective, nothing else matters. You can have a great budget, a great team, but if your technical plan isn't done well, you're not going to win. Okay, so I always recommend that people focus on the technical plan, no matter what the agency calls it. Okay, because the agencies, all of them want innovation. Okay, so that's the first part. Now, what you need to do when you're writing that technical plan is follow the outline precisely. They will give you an outline. They won't tell you follow it precisely, but that's what they want you to do. Okay, and they will provide an outline in the phase 1 solicitation. Don't vary it, because it's easy for a reviewer to find the information if you've structured your application exactly how the agency has told you they want to have it. It makes it easier to find the information. Now, this document, the technical plan, you do in stages. You don't just sit down one day and say, I'm going to write out my technical plan. Okay, I've never seen anyone do that and do it successfully. Okay, you do it in stages and you get feedback as you develop it. And this actually is the part that's fun, okay, because you're thinking about stuff that you would like to do, research and development you would like to do, you need money for it, and you're brainstorming with yourself, your colleagues, thinking about, well, how would I do this? How would I solve that problem? And it's the part that's actually fun, okay? But also structure it according to the outline that they give. Now, when you start writing it, don't worry at the beginning about page limits, because you're going to iterate it, okay? But as you finalize it, you're going to make sure that it winnows down to the page length that they specify for the technical part of the proposal. All right, so this is an example of the evaluation criteria that NSF has, because I just want to make the point that every agency will list their evaluation criteria in the solicitation. So this is what it says, that NSF reviewers will be asked to consider what the proposals want to do, why they want to do it, how they plan to do it, how they will know if they succeed, and what benefits can accrue if the project is successful. These issues apply both to the technical aspects of the proposal and the way in which the project may make broader contributions. That means commercialization. So to that end, reviewers will be asked to evaluate all proposals against two criteria: intellectual merit, and so the question then becomes, what do they mean by that? And broader impacts. What do they mean by that? And so they go on to say the following elements should be considered in the review for both criteria. So this gives you more clarity: advanced knowledge and understanding within its own field or across different fields. That's what they're calling intellectual merit. And then broader impacts, they're talking about how it will benefit society and advance desired societal outcomes. Now, not every agency puts a lot of weight on broader impacts, but NSF does. Okay, so you want to do both. And so I'm not going to go through the rest of them, but I'm just giving you an example. That's, telling you the evaluation criteria. This is from a DOE, a Department of Energy solicitation. And likewise, it talks about the criteria. This is in the solicitation. And it says cost or budget data submitted with a proposal will be considered during evaluation. But soundness, technical merit, and innovation of the proposed approach and its incremental progress towards topic or subtopic solution. So that's that one. And then this is merit review. It gives more criteria. So I'm just making the point that they have the criteria in every solicitation, and you should look at it up front. So the three primary evaluation criteria are innovation and scientific merit is number one. Then they look at your people. Do you have the means to do this? Where are you going to do it? That's the facilities. And do you have a good handle on how much it's going to cost you to do that? Okay, so that's where people, facilities, and budget comes into play. And then they look at commercialization. A synonym is impact. Okay. So the innovation challenge. What is innovation? Okay, a lot of times people don't really understand what innovation means. Okay, so so let me just double check here. Okay, yeah. So so I'm sorry, we need to go back here. Okay. So you look for the topics, first of all, for guidance. So this comes from NSF. They have a separate document for topics of interest. And this is a list of all the topics of interest to them. Okay. Later on, I have a current one. This is an older one. Okay. But I'm just including it so you see the variety of things, such as augmented and virtual reality, environmental technologies, pharmaceutical technologies, robotics, wireless technologies, a variety of them. When you go into a topic such as advanced analytics, they say very little. Okay, this is a granting organization. It's very open-ended, very flexible. So it focuses on innovations that involve the mathematical or computational analysis of data or statistics. So they're telling you the variety of things that they want you to address if you're thinking about advanced analytics, but it's brief. DoD tells you very specifically what they want. So the objective, develop and demonstrate an innovative mission-effective UAV, and it gives you a lot of detail. And it goes on for many pages. DOE also tells you what they want. So for some people, such as myself, it's easier to write a proposal if I know what they want. it's harder for me with a very open-ended one, okay, to know whether or not I'm hitting the mark, okay? So putting it together, you want to study the topic first, find out as much as you can about what others have done, tackle one section at a time of the outline. The first one is usually identification and significance of the problem. And when you're writing that, you don't repeat what they've told you that their interests are. You have to make the explanation your own. You look at the evaluation criteria and you repeat the process with all sections. So again, in order to write a responsive application to any agency, you have to do this. Study the topic first, find out as much as you can about what others have done by doing literature reviews or looking at a source I'll share with you in a moment. Tackle one section at a time. Don't think you're going to sit down and just write this out quickly. That won't work. Look at the evaluation criteria and repeat that with all sections. Now, another part that takes a lot of time is finding the right people. So if you are a startup, you will need to spend time right from the beginning looking for people so that you have a solid team, because you're going to be evaluated on whether or not you can do what you propose. Okay, it's not uncommon for someone writing their first proposal to any agency to add consultants and subcontractors. Because if you're one person and you're just starting, you may not have the credentials that would look like you could do all of these things. So you bring in others. And I've mentioned down here, they shouldn't be window dressing, meaning they're not there to just make you look better. They're there because they can help you, and you've given them roles and responsibilities so that they can help you be successful. The difference between a consultant and a subcontractor is a consultant is usually an individual. A subcontractor usually works for an organization. And so it's somebody from an organization that you're bringing in. The company is hiring someone from that organization. Contingent hires are letters that you get from people saying that if you win, I will join you. My rate of pay will be X, and I will work X number of hours with you. Now, how do you know how much to pay somebody when you're working on a budget and you're not getting paid probably yourself? Okay. You look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and again, this is hyperlinked, and it will tell you how much people in a given region are earning, an average number for certain labor categories. So if it's an environmental engineer or a software developer or, whatever. And so there is sample data there from Puerto Rico. A person that is pivotal is the principal investigator. And this is true of every agency, every program. They all have a principal investigator. They are considered the technical lead. There is a minimum number of hours that they need to work, and you need to check that with each agency to see if it is the same. The PI does not need any advanced degrees. That comes up a lot, that question, okay? But they have to be able to lead the technical team. Sometimes a person puts themselves as the principal investigator because they're the founder of the company. But sometimes the founder of the company may not have all the skills to do the work that's being proposed. They couldn't be the technical lead. So sometimes you have to bring in someone else, or someone else on your team may need to be the PI or the principal investigator. So we've talked about when you're writing a proposal and they're being reviewed, what are the 3 criteria they're looking at? We've talked about innovation, we've talked about people, and now we're talking about budget and facilities. So You can't figure out how much money something is going to cost, how many people you're going to need until that technical plan is together. And so once you start that technical plan and then you start asking yourself, who's going to do it? How many hours will it take them to do it? How much money will it cost me to hire them? So what will happen is once you start thinking about people and money, you're going to reduce usually what you're planning on doing in phase one, still being innovative, but recognizing its concept development. So you will need help working on the budget, okay? And so go to your local support network to help you with the budget because it's different, okay? And you're going to need support and line that up early. Most agencies will require that you complete something called a budget justification form, where you're saying, I need to buy this, it will cost that amount. I need to hire this person for X number of hours, and I will pay them X amount. I need to take one trip to Washington, D.C., it will cost X amount. But they will also ask you about indirect rates, which is something that most people don't know anything about when they start working with the government. And then fee. Fee is a synonym for profit. And a lot of companies forget to include fee. The maximum that most agencies are allowing nowadays, and it may be changing, but historically it's been 7%. But you want to make sure that out of the budget you have 7% set aside, ideally for fee or profit, because you can use that however you would like. So where do you go to get support? SBDCs, SBTDCs, SCORE, and other organizations. And I know that you have a lot of organizations in Puerto Rico that can provide this kind of help. You should line up the help before you start working on a proposal, okay? So go in and talk with someone when you say, I'm thinking about bidding on X. I know that I'm going to need some help. Can you help me with ABCD? Okay, and line it up beforehand. Now, one of the other things they look at is where you're going to do the work, so facilities. And so you can try and gain access to other people's facilities, including universities and federal labs, and then make sure that you understand the cost of that. Now, the last challenge is the commercialization challenge. We talked about innovation, we talked about people and money, and then the last one's commercialization. So guidelines will vary by agency. National Science Foundation and the Department of Energy have historically asked for the most information in a phase one, okay? And so usually what they're asking for is not long in terms of a commercialization plan to submit with your phase one application, but it has to be thought through. And you're going to need some help with gathering information that will help you formulate your plan. So again, line up support early. Now, this is a lot, and my intent is not to scare you, but to make you aware of what it takes to develop a responsive SBIR or STTR application to any agency. And then after our break, which will be coming momentarily, we'll talk about NSF. But what you need to think about is, do you have the time? So the time to do what? Okay, what are you going to be doing? What skills are required or involved with preparing a responsive proposal? The first one is probably one of the hardest ones, is to have an innovative concept in that field, whatever the field is. Don't rely on your family and friends to tell you, wow, that's really innovative, that's really cool, I would buy that if you were to make it. You have to look at the literature. You have to look broadly at what other people are doing, okay? You have to understand your agency's customers' needs. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Every agency has a mission. And when they decide to give money to a small business, it's to also help them fulfill their mission. So it's not all about you just getting money from them. They want something from you. They don't want your IP, they don't want you to pay them back, but they want you to address their needs as well. You have to be able to use the scientific method and apply it to a work plan. What does that mean? You have a hypothesis that you're testing, and you explain how you're going to find out. You think such and such will work. You want the money to do the research to find out if it will work. Okay, so then you map out a work plan. Developing a business case simply means that you're going to have to spend some time figuring out, thinking way ahead to who would want this? Who would the customers be? How large would that opportunity be? You have to follow the agency's guidelines explicitly. There are the registrations, which are a pain. So I usually do a little bit at a time. I'd much rather work on the fun things. Develop a team. You have to prepare the financials, and you've got to manage your time. So again, what are the elements of the application? There's going to be a technical proposal called by different names, as I've mentioned. You have to have a qualified PI or principal investigator. You will need resumes of key personnel. You'll need to provide a description of the facility. You'll need to include a budget with cost justifications, and there may be other documents that are unique to each agency. So that's a lot. So why do proposals get rejected? A company goes through and they do all of this work. Why do they get rejected? And they do, okay? The win rate across agencies varies, but the average across the whole thing is about 15%. Not 50, 15, okay? Now it will vary by agency, it will vary by program, and it will vary by year, okay? But why do they get rejected? First of all, there has to be this synergy between your goals and what the agency wants. In the case of NSF, they're looking to advance knowledge to make things better, okay, in many, many, many different fields. So if yours doesn't advance the understanding of a problem, then you're not going to meet their needs. You have to follow their instructions explicitly. Don't go over the budget, don't go over the page limit. Submit it on time unless there's an issue. Must be genuinely innovative, and then you've got to have the people and the facilities to do it, okay? So I've already mentioned the probability of winning a phase one. Very experienced and novice companies apply. Novice companies do win, okay? And it takes time how to learn to do a winning application. My guess is it takes, if you've done nothing, meaning you haven't looked at the literature, you haven't done any registrations, you've done nothing at all. My estimation is it'll take you about 150 hours to learn to write a really good proposal. Now, it is an investment of time in your future, because what happens is once people learn to write a winning proposal, they can write more and more of them. And many companies build a very solid foundation and help their organizations grow through SBIR and STTR funding. Now, I think this is one of my last slides before we take a break. There are many opportunities to submit applications, but there are windows, times when the solicitation comes out, times when the proposals are due. On the left-hand side, it lists the acronyms for the agencies, which are spelled out earlier when I showed you the amount of money that there is, that red and blue slide. But I'm going to look at NSF, which is unique, okay? And then I'm going to contrast it with USDA, okay? NSF has a solicitation that will be out for a year. There's only 2 agencies that have a solicitation that is open for a year, NSF and HHS. Okay. There are specific times during that year when you can submit an application. So it's open for a long time and you can choose, I'm going to do it at this time or that time or the other time. And the agencies tend to change those dates and how many times there are for you to submit. Okay, so you have to look at the solicitation. But this is unusual to have it open for the entire year. Okay, one set of problems that they're interested in. Now, if we look at USDA and we come over here, USDA historically has a solicitation come out sometime in July, and the proposals are due sometime in October. And most of the agencies have something like that. You know, there's usually between 10 and 14 weeks with most agencies to work on a solicitation. But with these and with NSF that we'll talk about momentarily or after the break, there are multiple windows and there's many things that NSF in particular has done to make it easier for startups to work with them. Okay, so what I'd like to do is ask first of all if anyone has any questions before we take a break.
Checking.
No tengo ninguna pregunta aquí excepto sobre la presentación, que les indique que está ahí y que la vamos a compartir también por el email para beneficio de los que tengan preguntas. Pero no tengo preguntas al momento, Keisha.
So we have no questions, Jenny, right now.
Okay, all right, so why don't we take a 10-minute break and come back at 1/4 after?
Okay.
Sure.
Okay.
All right, thank you, everyone.
There you are. Okay, sorry.
So Keisha, what I'll do is I'll end about 10 minutes too. I may speed up through some sections, but I want to make sure that
Sure.
there's time for Valentina. So, so
Oh, we have time. Don't worry about that. There's enough
okay,
time. We
okay,
have it.
sounds all right. So it's very cold here today. It's 37.
Really?
It is. It's crazy. How is it in Puerto Rico?
Not 37. It's hot. It's extremely hot here. It's 80, it's 82 degrees right now. It feels like it's a lot more. We are approaching summer, so
So
it's
it gets
not.
really humid.
It's hot. It's hot. But I'm not used to that cold weather though.
I need
When
to
I
go to Puerto
visit
Rico.
DC, when I visit DC and it goes like in the 50s or 40s, I'm like, oh my God, this is cold. I was there in February and people were telling me, no, this is warm. This is nice. Being in the 50s, I'm like, no, no, this isn't hot. It's cold for us. We're not used to that type of weather.
Yeah, well, we're getting teased because about a week ago it was 70 and it was beautiful and all the flowers are out and it's just lovely. But then it dipped
But
down. So our spring comes up, down, up, down. That's the pattern that we get.
my God, no, what we're getting is a lot of rain right now. So what's happening is it's rainy one day and then we get a really sunny day. Like today, it's really, really sunny today, and then it'll probably rain again, and so that's what happens. But in June, it'll stop completely. So we're getting really hot days.
Wow. I can't take the heat that much. Oh, all right, so let me hide my picture here. Oops. So turn that there. Okay. All right. Well, hello everyone. We're going to now shift to talking about the National Science Foundation's programs, and so let me get into this. So I mentioned that every agency has a unique mission, and NSF has a unique mission. And it's one that benefits a lot of people because it's so broad. They're very interested in fundamental research and education across all fields of science and engineering. Now, you may or may not have known this, but a lot of the federally funded basic research that happens in colleges and universities is funded by NSF. And so that's really their mission, and the SBIR and the STTR programs reside within what's called the Division of Industrial Innovation and Partnerships. So NSF has always been concerned about changes making things better in the future. And when they started, the SBIR program actually started with NSF. And its concern then, and that has remained, has been to enhance economic competitiveness. And doing so by focusing on new discoveries that will have a benefit for society. The focus for the last several years has been startups. So 85% of the Phase 1 awardees from NSF have 5 or fewer employees. And then as shown here, 72% have been founded within the past 3 years. And a majority of companies that work with NSF are first-time SBIR or STTR awardees. So it's a very good agency to work with for many reasons, but this certainly sets the stage for that. Now, this is the cover of the topics document for NSF. So what NSF does is it has one document for its topics. It has another document for the solicitation, or how you write the proposal. And so this document is called Solicitation Topics and Subtopics. And these are the topics for 2023. Okay, so this is the current list of topics. So what you would do if you're interested in submitting an application to the National Science Foundation is the first thing you would do is to take a copy, download a copy of this. In the toolkit that I believe was distributed with the PowerPoints, the toolkit, does have links to these sites, including where you can download the topics and subtopics. So what does a topic look like? So going back, let's say that I picked biological technologies and it has the acronym BT afterwards, and I want to know what that covers. So I would go to that section that talks about biological technologies, and it would have a paragraph or two that gives me more ideas about what they consider to be breakthroughs, okay? Again, NSF is interested in discovery, advancing things, so you're going to read that paragraph carefully. Now, because this is biological technologies, it also calls out down here what it doesn't do. Subtopics are not aimed at supporting or conducting clinical trials or clinical stage drug candidates. So you need to read the whole thing if you are working on a medical technology or a biological technology. You might look at this and think, hey, this might be a good topic to respond to. But then you would look at this and it would say, nope, those are not right for me. Now, under this, it has these subtopics, aquaculture. You might not have thought that aquaculture would appear as a subtopic underneath biological technologies or bio-inspired technologies. I don't know if you've seen underwater vehicles that look like a shark or look like a ray. I mean, it's that type of thing. It also includes fermentation. Now, it doesn't have more descriptions. It's just giving you these keywords. And then you would have to go back and say, well, okay, if I'm doing aquaculture, is there anything here that helps me figure out what they would consider is innovative? Okay. So a reasonable question that comes up all the time is, can I see what other people have submitted? Because if you see a winning proposal, then you have an idea about what you have to write. And the answer to that is no, you can't. But you can look at abstracts, okay? And I would encourage you to do that. And I'll tell you about this particular page. You would get to this by just typing in Google SBIR.gov and in the search bar. And it would bring up this database, and you would click on reports and go under award data. Okay, now over on the left-hand side, it has a bunch of different filters. It has them for agencies, for phase 1 awardees, for SBIR, STTR, et cetera, or year. But you could put in a keyword when you get to this page, and it would bring up abstracts. And so these are some abstracts that I found, for example, of the types of things that they have funded through these different categories. But you would be able to read the entire abstract, okay, by going here. It's got a little bit of an abstract down here, but you can see the whole thing. So you put in a keyword, you go to SBIR.gov, reports, award data, you put in a keyword, and then it would change the number. This is an unsorted. There's 179,000 abstracts in here. That's not NSF funded in any particular year. That's all of them that are in there. But you can search that, and you can find out not only a description of what was done, but you can find out the size of the company, who the PI is, and you can say, okay, well, I have a better idea. So let's say that you want to work with NSF and you want to know, how do I get started? Now, NSF has done something rather unusual, and they started this about 4 years ago, I think. They want to make it easier for you to determine whether you should spend your time trying to apply to NSF by submitting what they call a project pitch. There's no other agency that has something called a project pitch. And you can submit a project pitch at any time. So it is actually required now by NSF before you submit an SBIR or an STTR. So there's 4 sections to the project pitch, and you see that they are brief. The technology innovation, 500 words. The technical objectives, 500 words. The market opportunity, 250 words. And something about the company and team, 250 words. And you submit that through the NSF website. Now, what it will tell you on the NSF website is what they want those 500 words or however many words there are, what you're supposed to cover, okay? And so one of the key things you want to understand is how does NSF define research and development? Because back here it says, describe the technical innovation that would be the focus of a phase 1 project. And then it goes on and how it would meet the program's mandate to focus on supporting research and development of unproven high impact innovations. So you want to know, what do they mean by research and development? Because you want to make sure it aligns with what you're thinking. So they say it's a systematic study directed towards greater knowledge or understanding of whatever subject you've picked that fits under that topic or subtopic. It's directed specifically to generating new knowledge to meet a need. And then the third thing is the application of knowledge towards the production of useful things. Okay, so they're telling you what they mean. They do the same thing for technical objectives. I'm not going to go through this because of time, but you've got this. So what they want to see with the technical objectives, what they want to see in the 250 words for the market opportunity, and what they want to see about the company. This is the place where you would register, and you see that it says, please sign up to submit a project pitch for America's Seed Fund at NSF. This is the phrase that NSF uses to describe themselves. So a seed fund, business angels, venture capitalists that provide seed funds are early stage financing. And so they're basically saying, hey, we're doing early stage financing, but we're not taking any of your equity. You don't have to pay it back, etc. But this is where you're going to register, and then there would be a form where you complete the information. Think through the information carefully. Don't just sit down and type something in quick. You have to think it through carefully. So you can submit only one pitch per submission window. NSF, if you remember, I showed you the calendar. It has 3 times a year when one can submit a proposal, and that's also in one per one of those windows. They will send you a response from NSF, and they may ask for more information. If the pitch is good, you can submit a full proposal within the next 12 months. If it is not viewed as a good pitch, you may resubmit during the next submission window. So again, you can see why you need to think this through and do it carefully. So let's assume that you've gone through, you have done a thoughtful project pitch, you submitted it, and the program director liked what you had. And now you're going to start working on the application. So you're going to review the SBIR or the STTR solicitation in great detail. And again, you will find the link to that in the toolkit for NSF that was sent. So, what are the guidelines? Hey, I want to do this. What are the guidelines? So they have one solicitation a year with multiple submission windows. And these are the dates for 2023. So when it says submit a project pitch within a window, they're talking about these things as well. If invited, you can submit a full proposal at any time during a submission window. You can only submit one proposal per window. And they estimate making between 250 and 300 SBIR awards and 60 STTR awards during that period. The average award size, it appears to be about $275,000. Now, intellectual merit, we've talked about that before. That's important. They want creative, original, potentially transformative concepts. When you are talking about your work plan, they want it well-reasoned, well-organized, very clear. And then they want well-qualified individuals. So exactly the things I was talking to you about before, that's really what every agency is looking for. And NSF calls that out in their solicitation. Now, the project description contains these sections. Okay. The elevator pitch, which is not the same thing as a project pitch, and they tell you that should be no more than 1 page. The commercial opportunity comes next, and that's 1 to 3 pages. The technical solution, 2 to 4 pages. The company team, 1 to 3 pages. And then the technical discussion and R&D plan, 5 to 6. That's the heart of this. And then broader impacts of 1 to 2 pages. So they've told you the sequence and how many pages, and in the solicitation it will give you more guidelines. So this, for example, is what it says about the elevator pitch. I'll just go through this one. I'm not going to go in detail through the others because I want to make sure there's time for other people also to speak. So in the elevator pitch, which is 1 page, you would write not as Q&A, but you would talk about the company's motivation. Why do you want to do this, and what's the expected impact if they were to fund you and if this were successful? And then who wants it? Describe the customer and their expectations. And they talk a lot about market pain. What are the needs or what's the pain that the customer has? The value proposition, what makes yours better than what's out there already? What's different about what you're doing, and what value will it have? And then again, the word innovation. Come back and talk about the innovation, what's original about it, how does that transform the state of the art, and how is it differentiated from others? So again, all of this language comes from the solicitation. I'm just simplifying it and presenting it. It tells you the commercial opportunity. It tells you what they want to know about the company and the team. It tells you what they want to see in the technical plan. Okay, make sure you linger on this, and then broader impacts. So you can look at that on your own afterwards rather than me going through that in detail. So what are the stumbling blocks for someone when they are working on that proposal to submit in one of those submission windows? The first one is understanding the state of the art. You really do have to know the literature. If you come from an academic background, you probably do that. If you come from an applied background, you probably don't do that, and you need to. Again, go to the library, go talk to different organizations to see if they can help. Another stumbling block is understanding what a technical objective is. And again, you're going to work with someone, a service provider, to help you to understand what that is. And then, what is a work plan? Well, it usually says who's going to do the work, when it's going to be done, how it's going to be done, where it's going to be done, and how you will know if you were successful. The other challenge is estimating the amount of time, because when you start to work on a proposal, many times people think about, I want to do this so I can get to the commercial market. I want to do all of this, but you need to parse it. For phase 1 is proof of concept, and then you get another round of funding that you can compete for to develop that more. And so trying to parse it so that it's right for phase 1 is hard. The other thing is diligence. The project description is the heart of the proposal, and you have to get it right. These are the 2 sections that are very important. Now, there are other documents that you will need to include apart from that document with those parts. You have to list the references that you cite. You have to have biographical sketches, and there will be a certain format that they want it in. You have to provide a budget And subaward would mean if you're doing, for example, an STTR and you have a subcontractor, their budget has to be there. Budget justification, what's happening with the PI, the principal investigator, and then other documents regarding facilities, equipment, and then supplementary documents. So everything we've talked about before. The evaluation criteria, these are the two. We saw that before earlier from NSF. So what happens when you submit a proposal? The first thing is applications undergo an administrative review, and then they undergo a merit review. And what they're stating, and I don't know if this is true, because sometimes I know NSF is longer than it wants to be, but they're saying that 1 to 3 months after that window closes, so let's say there's a 4-month window and you submit in the middle, they're not going to start doing the review until the end of that window. Okay, and then they're going to look at all the proposals that came in during that 3 or 4 month period, and then they're going to evaluate them. And it will take 1 to 3 months after the window closes. The notification is 4 to 6 months after the window closes. And when does the award start? Ideally, 5 to 6 months after proposal submission. Okay, so eligibility is important. We've talked about this before. Make sure that you, early on, you make sure that you're eligible, because you don't want to do the work and then say, oops, there's a problem. Okay, some of the things that are important are ownership. And there is a key document, even though it's old, 2013, it is the document that is used that has all the guidelines. This is from SBA. And so you want to make sure that you look at this depending on the nature of how your business is formed. Okay, one question that comes up is, does NSF, SBIR, or STTR support non-US companies or work that is performed abroad? It only supports, only supports awards work being done in the United States. Now, sometimes with some agencies there is an exception, but there have been situations where I've worked with someone or started to work with someone, and then they say, oops, I do have a board member and they're in Chile and they would like to do some of the work there. Well, you know, no. So just be aware of that. Principal investigator, make sure that whomever is going to be the PI can basically meet the criteria that NSF has. They're here, I'm not going to go through them. Okay. So those are things. Now, certifications, we've already talked about these. The one we have not talked about is research.gov. So it used to be that companies would submit their application package to NSF through something called Fastlane. It's now through research.gov. Okay, and it takes time to learn even how to submit the application. But we've talked about the unique entity identifier, we've talked about SAM, and I mentioned that the SBA registry is quick. Okay, so depending on your experience with proposal writing, and I'm going to assume that most of you have not had experience with it, okay, because I work with a lot of companies through the DOE program that are new by definition, and they've had very little experience. So I'm assuming that that is the same case here. So you are going to, if the agency has a time limit, and NSF again has all of these submission windows, so you can pick when you're going to work on it, when you're going to submit it. So you have more time rather than squeezing it into a 10-week period. Again, NSF is unique in terms of allowing up to 2 years to complete a phase 1. Personally, I think it's much better to submit a phase 1 in 9 to 12 months because you want more money for phase 2, but you do have that amount of time. So the question is, do you have the time now? So what I've mapped out here, and this I will go through, and this is towards the end of the presentation, so then we can shift to everyone else. This is a 10-week schedule. So if you wanted to, from start to finish, try and do this in 10 weeks, and the only reason I'm doing it in 10 weeks is because other agencies have a limited time frame. You don't, you can expand this, but I created it because of the limited time frame. The important thing is the sequence. So the first thing you would do, so let's say that next week you decide you wanted to try working with NSF. What I would suggest you do first of all is download the topics and the solicitation. And look at what NSF has funded in the past in SBIR.gov. So you're looking at all the categories, you're going through highlighting things, and you're looking at what's been funded in the past. Then in week 2, reflect upon the R&D you wish to conduct and determine which topic area that it fits in. And ask yourself, does this interest meet NSF's definition of R&D? Is it innovative? Have you spoken to potential customers and do you know their pain points? Okay, so the first couple of weeks, you're mulling this all over, trying to find a fit, thinking about it. Third week, start drafting the project pitch. And at the same time, look for local service providers and get feedback from them on your project pitch. Since you can only submit one during a submission window, get it right and get some support to help with that. So assuming you've got the feedback, then go to and submit the project pitch and start working on the registrations, especially SAM. Okay, I didn't change this DUNS, is now UEI. And start thinking about people, even though it's early, you know, just thinking about it, you know, what kind of people would I need to work with me on this? And then while waiting for feedback on the project pitch and, you know, all of this stuff, start reviewing the project description outline, which is the section from the solicitation, and that's the name, project description. And start drafting the section that it calls the elevator pitch and the commercial opportunity sections. That brief. Start writing them. Have a meeting with a service provider. And if you need help because some information's missing, talk to them about it. Now, letters of support. A letter of support is not a letter that's indicating someone is going to provide funding. It's a letter where someone indicates the importance of what you're doing and how it might change things in the future. And it helps to have such letters to submit as part of your application, because it shows that you will reach out, and it also has someone else verifying that this is innovative. Then week 6, start drafting the innovation and technical discussion and R&D plans and get feedback. Okay. Then week 7, review the documentation on how to submit the proposal through research.gov. And that will tell you about supplemental documents that are needed. Get help with the budget, because right now you should be at the point where you have an idea about what you might do. And so you need to start thinking about money. And you're waiting to hear from NSF on the project pitch still. Decide whether to push forward or wait, and focus on the financials towards the end, but you're going to need time and written documentation from others. And then bit by bit, you will have been completing that 15-page draft, that project description outline, and secure feedback, complete bios to guidelines. And then refine all documents, review the information with service providers, and decide whether to submit now or later. Okay. All right, so that's everything I wanted to cover with you. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen go back here, and I'm also going to turn my camera. I think I can do that. Yeah. All right. So does anyone have any questions?
I'm trying to check.
Déjame verificar. No tengo ninguna pregunta en el chat de question excepto sobre el material, Keishla.
So we don't have any
Sí, Jenny.
questions right now.
All right, so Keishla, I'm going to turn this over to you, okay?
Thank you, and thank you, Jenny. Así que ahora tenemos a la señora Valentina Pirazzi, que nos va a estar hablando brevemente del programa de SBIR Support que tiene el Trust con quien nosotros pues colaboramos. Valentina, ¿estás por aquí?
Sí.
Sí, Valentina, le estoy enviando el presenter request. Ahí está. Enviado. Sí.
¿Ven ahora la presentación?
Sí, se ve.
Se ve perfectamente, sí.
Se fue. Veo a Keishla. Ahora. ¿Se ve ahora?
Sí, perfectamente, se ve completa, sí. Sí, sí.
Ok, pues muchas gracias a tanto a Keishla como a Dora y a la doctora Servo. Hoy yo estoy en el rol de parte del Fideicomiso de Ciencia, Tecnología e Investigación de Puerto Rico, donde quería darle brevemente, presentarle unos servicios que ofrece el Fideicomiso en cuanto al programa SBIR y colaborando con el Puerto Rico SBTDC. El Fideicomiso de Ciencia y Tecnología tiene distintos programas, hay uno específico para apoyar a todos estos empresarios que tienen tecnologías innovadoras que interesan seguir desarrollando su proyecto para eventualmente poder comercializarlo. El programa SBIR es una ayuda y se trabaja colaborando con el SBTDC y también hay otros recursos adicionales. Simplemente queremos que sepan que existe el programa y que al final aparece una dirección de correo electrónico donde pueden enviar preguntas y comunicarse. La meta de este programa es que eventualmente, el candidato pueda someter una propuesta competitiva al programa de SBIR. El apoyo que ofrece el Fideicomiso no es un vacío. Nosotros trabajamos colaborando con otras entidades. Tenemos al SBTDC que nos apoya en este proceso. Hay otro programa, el que aparece Technical Business Assistance, ya eso es para las compañías que están participando en el programa de SBIR, que reciben un dinero para poder contratar servicios de otras compañías en aspectos específicos de comercialización. Y pues también hay una red de mentores que pueden apoyar a estas compañías en todo este proceso. El apoyo que se da el programa de SBIR dentro del Fideicomiso se enfoca particularmente en tres áreas. Está la de outreach, o de comunicar que el programa existe, los servicios y los recursos que hay disponibles. Con 1966, que es otro programa del Fideicomiso, nos ayuda en este proceso de dar eventos, de dar a comunicar. Tenemos el aspecto de desarrollar la propuesta, donde se da un apoyo, y está el aspecto de la educación. Nosotros no somos writers, no escribimos, no redactamos la propuesta, hay una razón verdad para ello, pero sí ayudamos a estos candidatos que están en ese proceso a darle una retroalimentación, unos comentarios, unas guías para ayudarlos a mejorar esa propuesta y que sea al final una propuesta competitiva. En la parte de outreach, que voy a ser muy general, lo más importante es que hay situaciones donde tenemos investigadores que tienen un proyecto, quieren trabajar la propuesta, pero necesitan aliarse con un negocio, porque como saben, SBIR, quien solicita al programa es una entidad comercial, es un negocio. Pues les ayudamos en ese pareo de identificar quizás posibles negocios que quieran participar con este investigador, y de igual manera pues, hemos tenido negocios que tienen el proyecto, tienen esta idea innovadora, pero necesitan ese investigador principal para poder trabajar la propuesta y solicitar. Allí también entramos nosotros a ayudarles a identificar posibles investigadores principales que quieran trabajar con el negocio. En la parte de desarrollo de la propuesta es cuando ya está en unas etapas bien iniciales. Aquí colaboramos con el CPDC. Utilizamos lo que mencionó la doctora Servo del Elevator Pitch de National Science Foundation, porque es un documento que es una herramienta bien útil, tanto para el que solicita como para nosotros, para ayudarle a entender mejor cuál es esa tecnología innovadora, qué es lo que tiene, cuál es el aspecto innovador que tiene para poder identificar posibles oportunidades dentro de otras agencias que quizás el proponente no ha considerado inicialmente. En la parte de si la persona todavía no ha registrado su compañía y estos otros registros del SAM, pues allí el SBIR le da ese apoyo. En la parte de educación, no somos grant writers. Sí tenemos lo que llamamos grant writers advisors. Estas personas tienen muchísima experiencia con el programa SBIR, tienen un background científico. Usted tiene que trabajar algún borrador para que el grant writer, este advisor, le pueda dar comentarios de cómo quizás presentar, cómo hacer cambios, porque para que salga una propuesta competitiva, para que ustedes entiendan que quizás la manera en que se está enfocando un experimento no es tan innovador. Todo ese tipo de comentarios, eso pues nosotros damos apoyo. El propósito es que sí salga la propuesta competitiva. Aquí es un proceso donde se envuelve tanto el proponente como el SBIR y el fideicomiso. Esto no es trabajo de una sola persona, es un trabajo en equipo. Y algo que quiero mencionarles es que el fideicomiso tiene un programa de pareo de fondos. Las compañías que estén establecidas en Puerto Rico, que soliciten un SBIR o SBIR y lo obtengan, el fideicomiso le parea hasta $100,000 en fase 1 y hasta $200,000 en fase 2. Por ejemplo, si usted obtuvo un SBIR fase 1 de NSF y obtuvo $275,000, usted puede recibir hasta $100,000 adicionales de parte del fideicomiso de tecnología. El uso de este dinero que le daría el fideicomiso puede cubrir unos gastos. Usted puede tener que el grant SBIR no le va a cubrir. Por ejemplo, compra de equipo que no se permite bajo SBIR, pues con el programa del fideicomiso, ese dinero, pues sí, usted pudiera adquirir ese equipo. Los gastos que cubre el programa del fideicomiso son gastos que se incurren en Puerto Rico. Aquí como que se quedó una información. El programa de pareo de fondos es para compañías establecidas en Puerto Rico, que su investigación la van a realizar en Puerto Rico. Si usted establece su compañía en Texas y va a hacer la investigación pues allá, pues lamentablemente pues ahí el fideicomiso no puede darle ese apoyo. El apoyo es para compañías establecidas en Puerto Rico que van a hacer la mayoría de su investigación aquí en Puerto Rico. Keisha.
Gracias, Valentina, por tan importante información, ¿verdad? Y una de las organizaciones con las cuales el Puerto Rico SBTDC y el Centro de Innovación y Tecnología pues trabaja es con el Puerto Rico Science Trust. ¿Para qué? Para proveerle a ustedes, ¿verdad? A todos esos inventores o, ¿verdad? Personas que desean solicitar un SBIR, STTR, proveerles los mejores recursos disponibles y por eso es que trabajamos en conjunto. Pasamos, ¿verdad? Esto es trabajo, como bien dijo Valentina, esto es trabajo en equipo. No sé si se ve, mi pantalla, Doribet.
Voy. Sí, estoy viendo el flyer de Puerto Rico Idea.
Exacto, el flyer que
Right.
ya pronto va a salir, así que ya
Ya fue
vamos a
aprobado.
abrir. Ya fue aprobado. El Puerto Rico SBTDC tiene el programa del Puerto Rico IDEA, que es subvencionado por el SBA por su programa de FAS, el Puerto Rico IDEA, el cual se llama el Puerto Rico Innovation Development Entrepreneurship Assistance Program. Lo que hace este programa es, a través de un programa de capacitación y de mentoría 1-a-1, ayuda a cualquier persona que tenga un producto o una idea innovadora. Y el concepto innovador es, como bien dijo la doctora Servo, es un poquito confuso lo que es innovación, así que innovación va a variar de acuerdo a una de las 11 agencias que se solicitan los programas de SBIR o STTR, pero nosotros también educamos acerca de qué es innovación desde la perspectiva de un programa de SBIR, STTR. Así que si usted va a solicitar al SBIR o STTR, pues nosotros tenemos este programa para ayudarlos a ustedes. Lo pasamos por un programa de capacitación. Le ayudamos para saber cómo escribir su propuesta de una manera que sea competitiva. Tenemos mentores que lo ayudan en esto. Aquí nosotros también trabajamos con el Science Trust para que entonces verifique, los ayudamos a buscar estos recursos. Así que la convocatoria del PR Idea, el cuarto cohort, va a abrir el 1 de mayo. Así que ustedes son los primeros en ver el flyer que ya va a estar saliendo prontamente, el 1 de mayo hasta el 31 de mayo va a estar abierta esta convocatoria. Se va a ver, ¿verdad? Cuando accesa a nuestra página, pues les repito, todavía no hemos puesto, le digo, ustedes lo están cogiendo hot off the press, calentito. Así que van a presionar el Bitly, a través del Bitly les va a llevar un form, y a través de ese form ustedes van a poder solicitar el programa contestando unas preguntas que le vamos a hacer acerca de, ¿verdad?, de su idea innovadora. Así que si alguien tiene alguna duda, pregunta, ya sea para la doctora Servo, ya sea para Valentina, acerca de los programas que ofrece el PROS o los servicios de Puerto Rico SBTDC. Estoy verificando el chat. Si no hay dudas o preguntas, ha sido un placer el poder ofrecerles este taller o webinar, y estén pendientes a nuestras redes sociales para que pues, puedan ver qué otros talleres webinars estamos ofreciendo. Y el 1 de mayo saben que abre la convocatoria del programa Puerto Rico IDEA. Así que un placer y buen provecho a todos.
Ay, estaba con él, levantado con él.